Good morning, boys and girls. We are in Oak Ridge, Tennessee for the Tennessee Mountain Jeep Jamboree USA. Now I know you're all aware that Windrock has got some amazing trails and some great off-roading. What you may not be aware of is that Oak Ridge is also a major player in the Manhattan Project.
Good morning. Morning. I'm Bob Yarbrough. I'm the local coordinator on behalf of Jeep Jamboree USA and Mark A. Smith Off-Roading. I want to welcome you to the 12th Tennessee Mountain Jamboree.
The Cumberland Mountains, an area that's amazingly beautiful, but that doesn't mean it's going to be an easy Jeep ride. It's time to hang on. Jeep Jamboree USA isn't just about driving over another big pile of rocks. Each destination is just that, a destination. Yes, there's always unique and often difficult off-roading to be experienced, but each Jamboree setting has its own personality and historical significance. As we travel to the trailhead, some of the mystique and controversy surrounding the area was introduced to us by our trail guide. This wasn't going to be just another trail. As I looked over the mountains, I hadn't realized that right here in this valley, events took place, good or bad, that would change the world forever. The trails we were traveling and the hills and valleys we were experiencing had been inhabited by families for decades. Coal miners and farmers assumed that they would be able to live simple lives, and that they would live and die in this beautiful area for generations to come. But things never seemed to go as planned. A series of world events were set in motion that changed it all. Like the turn of an ignition switch. From the time Hitler invaded Poland, the U.S. had been secretly involved in the war. Pearl Harbor, it changed all that overnight. No one ever thought that the beaches of Hawaii could have a direct effect on the quiet life in the hills of Tennessee. Any conflict requires propaganda to help the war effort, and the wheels of propaganda were turning. They're coming, and the American way of life would lie in the balance. Everyone wanted to do their part, but not everyone could fight. They could, however, work and produce to help with the war effort. Everyone sacrificed in their own way. Even before the U.S. direct involvement in the war, it became clear that threats to the world were escalating. Albert Einstein was aware of a new technology that was being developed in Germany and wrote a letter to President Roosevelt, warning him of bombs of a new type. Seeds had been planted and the race was on. Unbeknownst to the folks in the sleepy hills of Tennessee, events were set in motion that would directly and severely impact their lives. The pit-bull general that built the Pentagon was assigned to build a bomb. General Groves just needed a place to do it. Now, you may ask yourself, out of all the secluded places in the country that could have been chosen as a site, why Tennessee? Enter Senator McKellar, Tennessee's favorite son. Now, history books tell us that the natural terrain of the area would provide the necessary hills and valleys for protection from accidental blasts. Or, the other story is that when President Roosevelt met with the then Appropriations Chair, Senator McKellar, he explained the importance of hiding the billions required to secretly build the bomb. Senator McKellar nodded and answered, "Yes, Mr. President. And where in Tennessee would you like to build it?" "I don't know. You decide. But you may want to follow the money." This wasn't the first time the inhabitants of Anderson County had felt the forceful hand of their government. From fighting to keep cheap contract labor from taking their jobs in the coal mines to...
The gigantic Norris Dam comes through the winter a step nearer completion. The staccato echoes of clattering machines and the shouts of thousands of busy workmen have resounded through the valley of the Clinch River for nearly 2 years as work has been rushed forward to complete one of the country's largest power and reservoir dams by 1936.
It seemed like every 10 years the government was coming in and disrupting their lives. Now it was the War Department's Corps of Engineers' turn. They made an announcement to the kids at school and then went house to house posting notices. Some had weeks, others had days to get out. The one thing that was working in the government's favor was that this was war, and most were willing to do their part. With the locals leaving the area, Groves had his land. It was time to start building. Jeepers are no stranger to having property shut down and then taken from their use. It doesn't matter what the reason, it's always painful. As we traveled just a smidge of the 72,000-acre Windrock recreation area, it was great to see such a tremendous resource designated for off-road use. This land has truly been preserved, something we can all enjoy. It's hard to imagine coal miners traveling the same 300 miles of road that we were using. The trails were challenging for even state-of-the-art, well-equipped Jeeps. It must have been pure work for the miners. Imagine if the government came in and took it all away with no explanation. The miners continued working while down in the valley, a state-of-the-art nuclear facility was being built. You want to talk about a public relations and logistics nightmare? Try building an entire industry from scratch and doing it with labor pulled from outsiders and a population that had just been forcefully evicted from their homes. Now to try to keep the whole thing secret. And what were the miners thinking as they watched the new city being constructed, especially with all the traffic being generated by the project? The miners had to wonder what was going on down in that valley. Have you ever heard of Tennessee mud? Yeah, it's a reality. And we at the Jamboree have the pleasure of experiencing it. A little rain seems to be the norm for the area, and we had to drive through it. Construction workers had to work and build an entire city in the mud. Things were changing fast. In the town of Clinton, there were 600 trailers for construction workers in a town that only had 600 original homes. The entire settlement went from a population of 3,000 in 1942 to 75,000 by 1945. Now, I'm going to call that explosive growth. Those that couldn't participate in the war effort as troops on the ground now had a real chance to contribute. Sacrifice and hardship was accepted as they worked long hours to complete a mysterious project and do it within a deadline ordered by General Groves.
Right there. Come down, drop a little bit. There you go.
They never stopped working, and though slow at times and with difficult working conditions, they pulled together and completed a project that would have tremendous benefit in the war effort. They just didn't know what that project was.
Good right now.
They may not have had all the information, but they listened and did their best and safely completed the task, even without being able to see the big picture. Mr. Pentagon was getting it done. They built an entire town and multiple buildings, including the largest building in the world, and had it producing enriched uranium in well under 2 years. A project that big requires some qualified personnel. Groves was able to establish a workforce to not only construct, but staff the complex. Best friends working next to each other may not have had any idea what the other was doing. This was war, and secrecy was tight. Each phase of the project was separate, and there were strict orders to keep it that way. One of the reasons that Jeep Jamborees never get old is the people. They come from all over the country and even from around the world to experience America. As we stopped for lunch in a pavilion that was completely built and funded by the local clubs, it was great to see Jeepers actively involved in maintaining and improving the park. Each of us has the opportunity to contribute to these projects, in different ways. And for the Oak Ridgers, the same held true. Those that couldn't participate in the war effort as troops on the ground now had a real chance to contribute. Sacrifice and hardship was accepted as they worked long hours to complete a mysterious project and to do it within the tight deadline ordered by General Groves. News reports were stressing the fact that the intimidating German war machine seemed massive and unstoppable, pushing over any obstacle in its path. Very often the U.S. forces found themselves outgunned and under-equipped. Every phase of the war effort was imperative. It was known that the atom had been split, and it was also believed that the Germans were trying to build a bomb. In order to overcome that threat and to stop or even slow our losses, we needed the technology to design and build advanced weapons. And it needed to happen fast. From the time the workers entered the high security gate, they became an important part of the war effort. Every aspect of life played a role. The war continued to escalate, and the people of Oak Ridge knew their jobs were important. They were often reminded that they needed to work in secrecy. Security was paramount. Now, how do you help thousands of workers understand the importance of secrecy? The propaganda machine fueled the paranoia. One slip could result in a complete breach of security. Lives were at stake. As each of the teams solved their particular part of the puzzle, the need to remain silent increased. We were fighting on two fronts, but which was the bigger threat? Our path was set, but it was treacherous. The Oak Ridgers were working on faith and determination. As time went on, secrecy fueled mistrust. Even lie detectors were used to help encourage compliance. It must have seemed like there was no end in sight. They pushed on. There was no turning back. The only way out was forward. It had become a war of resources, and both sides were in short supply. As the war pressed on, it was an uphill climb. Progress was slow and difficult. Gains were often measured in inches. We accelerated our efforts and plunged headlong into the unknown. Mankind was about to cross a line that would change its future forever. I had to wonder, how could such a peaceful and beautiful existence unknowingly be part of a conflict that was so unforgiving and final? Back in Oak Ridge, they continued to work and play, even though they really had no idea what the fruits of their labor would become. Oak Ridge was doing its part. The uranium was now weapons grade.
Here it is, General Groves. Plutonium.
That's the first time I've seen it, but if you don't mind, I wish you'd hold that under it, because after all, there's about $50 million in that test tube.
People continued interacting, living their lives and doing their jobs, It was a time of war, but life went on in Oak Ridge, even with a few liberties being infringed on. The war in Europe was going badly for the Germans. The Allies were ultimately able to overcome the Nazi aggression, and they surrendered. Little did they know that that act of surrender had actually saved thousands of German lives. As solutions were discovered, forward progress was accelerated. Now it was up to the other partners in the team to build and test the gadget, as it was known. A 100-foot tower in New Mexico was to be Trinity's test bed. A 100-mile shockwave and a 7.5-mile mushroom cloud marked the success of the Trinity test. A new era was ushered in. Little Boy, as the bomb was named, was loaded and shipped within 4 hours of the test. Within a few weeks, the now famous Enola Gay would deliver the bomb to the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Detonated from 600 feet above the city, the devastation was swift and final. A 5,400-degree fireball expanded at hundreds of miles an hour. 70,000 people were instantly killed, and another 60,000 would follow in the coming months. Still, the Japanese government refused to surrender.
After Hiroshima, Tokyo wondered when the next atom bomb would fall. They did not wonder long because the president delivered an ultimatum: surrender or face complete destruction. The Japanese ignored the ultimatum. It was evident that atomic power to break the enemy must become the tale of two cities. Nagasaki was selected to become target city number 2.
3 days later, Fat Man, a plutonium implosion bomb, was dropped and detonated 1,600 feet above Nagasaki. $70,000 were killed instantly, and another 140,000 died over the next 5 years. The people in Oak Ridge only now realized that their efforts had contributed tremendously to a swift end of the war. No matter what your opinion is on the events that took place here in Oak Ridge, there's another side of the equation that is helping mankind in ways never dreamed possible. With all of the original buildings now demolished and long gone, only the Y-12 facility continues to function. Medical isotopes that are being created there have spawned an entirely new field of medicine. It's difficult to calculate the lives that are now being saved through a technology that started with a bomb. We as Jeepers are able to explore and experience areas of the country that are often inaccessible to on-highway vehicles. The Tennessee Mountain Jeep Jamboree USA is an event that really must be experienced to understand. Check this out. I'm going to demonstrate just a little bit of that high tech that's available right here in Oak Ridge. Watch this.
Seriously, stay with me right here.
Okay, you probably can't even hardly hear me, can you? No, I don't think you could. Watch this. But now all of a sudden, even if I whisper, you're able to completely hear me because of the whisper disc technology that's available right here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.